let people filter in. John, I noticed you posted a bunch of freaking videos today after we talked for like an hour. So you've been a busy man, man. Can you fill us in while we're waiting on what you posted?
Well, I had already had them uploaded. I was just waiting to make them live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was only two. I mean, one of them was just kind of giving folks an update, some stuff I got coming up, what's going on, this, that, and the other, just a little chit chat, nothing overly special. And then just kind of rehashing my my couple of DMR precision type rifles that I put together. And just kind of going over some of the whys and wherefores and whatnots with those. And partly because some folks have been asking about it, and it's been a while since I did videos on any of them, and they were all spaced out. I never showed all three and kind of the progression, how they went with me. And, just kind of putting that together because some folks have been asking. And then at the same time, urging folks to get back to, everybody loves to do the high speed, door kicking stuff, which is great. But you know what? Get out there and prone out and see what you can do at that 200, 300, 400, 500 yard mark.
Yeah.
Get a little old school accuracy back going, because distance can be a good friend, especially for the armed citizen.
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
So, that was about it.
Well, cool. Well, we got about 25 folks in here, so I guess we can get started. Fellas, I don't have some like big organized listed topic discussions tonight. I just figured, the guys we have in here, we'll just discuss tough, realistic training. Les and I just got back from the 40th anniversary semester at One Shepherd, and I'm sure I'm speaking for him too, but I can definitely speak for myself and say it was unfucking believable.
Nailed it, dude.
I mean, it had helicopters, it had vehicles. I mean, it was unbelievable. I literally commanded a full TO rifle platoon out there during the field training exercise, the final culminating event at every One Shepherd semester. And it had everything from day to night fighting. I mean, it was just a bloodbath, and it was awesome. Full auto weapons out there, just amazing. But let me backtrack a little bit. This was actually a live stream we were supposed to have out there at One Shepherd. Doc Larsen, Les, and I were going to go live and have you guys in there. And I mean, God, the connection was just so awful that we couldn't make it happen. It was just, we tried to go live, and somehow John ended up taking over my YouTube channel and organizing a coup of the federal government on my YouTube channel while I was out there powerless. So.
Yeah, you got to play the dissident every once in a while.
In any event, guys, I thought this would be a great topic to kick around, because I know virtually everybody that watches our respective YouTube channels is into training. I mean, I don't know how you can watch and be subscribed to our channels and not train.
If they're not, they should be.
I know, right? So in any event, if this is your first time, if you're coming out of left field, I'll go around the horn here and introduce everybody. So this is Les. He has the YouTube channel Pegasus Tests. Les served in the Marine Corps in the early 90s. He was a combat veteran at Desert Storm. He owns his own logistics company. So, when it comes to moving shit from point A to point B, he's your man. He's also a black hat instructor at the One Shepherd Leadership Institute. And he also has his own training company. Is it Polaris? Polaris Training?
Polaris Training and Simulations.
Yeah. So he knows a thing or two about, conducting tough, realistic training. Kicking it over to this guy. This is John at UW Gear and Alpha Charlie Concept. So John has his own small business called UW Gear, makes high quality chest rigs and other associated gear such as bandoliers. He's been doing that for years, and he's just been running his own company. But John served in the Army National Guard in the early 90s, so he's a veteran there. And he also has a YouTube channel, not only UW Gear YouTube channel, but Alpha Charlie Concepts YouTube channel. So definitely a man that has attended numerous training events, has also hosted his own training events, and definitely a very big contributing person for this particular live stream. Moving on to our last gentleman here, we got Bruce. Bruce at Camp Armament. Be sure to check out his YouTube channel. Bruce has been my right-hand man on many YouTube videos. He brings a civilian perspective today. And I know Bruce has attended numerous training courses, whether it be, small arms or medical stuff. I know he's pretty much been there, done that when it comes to the civilian training, tactical aspect of things. He's also an armorer. He Cerakotes weapons, builds weapons. I mean, man, if you guys haven't seen some of his projects, particularly some of the Vietnam era projects he's done, just phenomenal stuff. Absolutely phenomenal. Seriously jealous. But in any event, guys, that is our panel tonight. And like I said, I think everybody on here has something to contribute to the fight here. Unfortunately, we don't have Dr. Larsen on tonight. He had several obligations, which is understandable. We're on the heels of the finishing up the 40th anniversary semester, so I know he's got a lot of loose ends he's got to tighten up. So in any event, guys, let's kick it over to somebody else take it. I've been bumping my gums here for enough, and let's get you guys in the fight here. Who wants to take it first?
I'll go. All right. So if you're going to be citizens that's proficient in firearms and tactics, there's three things you have to do. One, you have to go take some classes. Guys are stuck with the power tool gene, I like to call it. And by that, I mean, has anybody ever read the instructions to their cordless drill or their power saw? Did you know it came with instructions? And no, we know how to use power tools as guys, and we go out and only abject failure will convince us we don't know what the hell we're doing. Same thing applies to firearms as well. You need to go out and get some good firearms training from the basic level, good pistol, concealed carry class. And then, depending on what you feel your needs are, go get a good rifle carbine class, go to some precision rifle classes, definitely learn how to use a shotgun, because not only does it give you devastating firepower over the range of your pistol, it can also feed you and kill just about anything on the North American continent, probably up to and including polar bears. So in addition to having that level of preparedness, taking classes, you have to test yourself. And there's two ways to test yourself. One, going to competition. Not every competition in the world is the best one, but the two that really stand out to me for good training are, one, CMP, because it's pure marksmanship training. And you'll find if you go to a CMP match, most of the old timers that go there, they've learned more about marksmanship. Actually, they've forgotten more about marksmanship than you can ever hope to learn. And the other one is the brutality or two-gun action style matches, which are all themed around military type activities. So you have to usually shoot, move, and many times communicate during a stage just to complete it. And while being precise is good, having agility helps you out as well. And the third thing is something Brent and I just did all last week: realistic force-on-force training in the field at realistic distances. If you're going to be a well-rounded and trained person, you have to do those three things, in my opinion.
Yeah,
And then you got to go home and practice it all on your own.
What was that, John?
And then you've got to go home and practice all of that on your own.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to training courses and shoot on square ranges all day long, and that's all great. I don't want to undermine that stuff, because obviously that's fundamentals. But going back to the type of training like the One Shepherd Leadership Institute, and I know there's other organizations out there that do similar things, but doing force on force, guys, when you're actually going up against an actual living, thinking enemy, I mean, that just brings a whole new dynamic. I mean, whether that's airsoft, paintball, freaking, World War II reenactments or Vietnam reenactments. I mean, it just, you get a big lesson in training there. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been to force on force, and it's like you get killed and you look over and there's you see the guy that got you. You're like, oh, fuck. You learn more in failure than you do in success, and a lot of times. And, I think force on force training is pretty much top tier when it comes to, combat conditioning.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Brent, we did pretty good with the Op 4 platoon last week. We got nothing to say that we didn't accomplish our mission or anything like that. But those guys threw wrenches at us. They did things we did not expect them to do. We came up with plans and said, we think they'll do this. And they did something completely different that we had to adjust to.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to take over this just yet about Wood Shepherd. I know you and I will definitely hit that subject later on.
Oh, yeah.
What you guys on the bottom got?
So,
well, go ahead, John.
Bruce, you go ahead because I'll get going for a second on this one.
Well, I know you will. I'll tell you, there's a lot. I'm kind of looking at the comments and listening to what you guys said as well. Man, they're all over the place, and rightfully so. One thing that I'll mention, I want to kind of give a shout out to the Appleseed training program. That's something a little different that I think a lot of people may not be familiar with. I went to it with some sort of misconceptions, and man, let me tell you what, I learned so much. It's not necessarily physically challenging, but what the Appleseed program is, and I'll say there's kind of two types. Make sure that the one you go to is a known distance range, because they also teach a scaled down 25-yard or 25-meter range, which sort of uses the military's idea of, which they've also done too, of, hey, we can scale down a range and qualify people. Guys, it's not the same. So for those of you that are in the military, if that's where you've primarily shot, it's not the same, and it will humble you. Get out on a known distance range with your full-powered center-fired rifle and go off of that. Appleseed has gotten to sort of to doing a lot of 22-based stuff because the principles are the same on the 25 range, and that's fine. And it's fine to train that way, but then make sure you can get out on a known distance to actually qualify. I had been shooting my whole life and had a lot of shooting experience. And the way that they train is not the way that, say, the current Army trains today. Their course of fire is based very much on a World War I, World War II style marksmanship range. And it is extremely difficult. It was difficult for me to do with a full-size AR-15. And the qualification was actually written for guys with infields and Springfields. I can't imagine having to do that with a bolt-action rifle. So all the basics are taught there, the basic conventional shooting positions, using your sling, bone structure, all that kind of old-school Marine Corps stuff. And you'll start shooting out at different distances on human-sized silhouettes, and you'll be scored for hits or misses. And that's a whole lot of fun, and it shows you where you are on your capabilities. Whereas I know some of the guys were talking about shooting on, short distances. I understand that, you may only get out on the 2D range from time to time, and depending on where you live, that may be all that's available. So look for an Appleseed that you can travel to and shoot known distance, because it'll let you actually verify your zero. Man, I'm going to tell you, I can go on and on and on, but one of the big problems I see, and you guys can ask yourselves if you're guilty of it too, but there's so many people that are saying, hey, I'm going to do a 25-meter zero because it's the same as 200 yards, or whatever the case, a 38-meter zero because it's the same as 300 yards. I'm going to bet you a $10 bill that it is not the same. You're going to get out there with you take your 30, whatever it is, 38-yard zero, or your 25, whatever, and then you go out on known distance range and you fire off one cold bore shot. Chances are you won't even cut paper. You'll be close. You'll see it hit close. It's not close enough. And the difference between you and me, if I'm the bad guy, and if I'm zeroed at known distance and can use that rifle and you aren't, that's a hit versus a miss. So think about that and take it seriously. There's too much talk on the internet about short distance stuff being everything. Having distance between you and your enemy is a good thing. John mentioned, I know we all agree. And yeah, guys, you can't just take those short distance zeros and convert to math and expect for it to be correct at known distance. You've got to actually shoot known distance and verify. I can guarantee almost every time I've ever done it, I've ended up having to make adjustment. All right, I've ran past my time. I'm going to hand it over to John. John, go.
Yeah, Les is monitoring.
I was going to say, Les is about to blow up, or he was timing Bruce, one of the two.
That's the Emmy Award music.
Yeah.
That's
The
my
light was
phone because when
green,
that thing goes
yellow,
off,
red,
it's always red
and then
alert.
it turned off.
I say, or was that the incoming tone? So before I get into my rant, just to piggyback off of something that Bruce said, you got to get out there on that known distance range and know where you're hitting at different distances.
Mhm.
But the real world's not a known distance range. However, absolute shameless plug, if you're using a primary arms ACSS reticle optic, the world is a known distance range really easily. I'm just saying. So
Yeah.
shameless plug for them.
It's true.
But yeah,
No, it's not shameless. It's good shit, man. And don't feel bad about telling people to buy good stuff.
oh, I'm not. Believe me, I don't. But so like, all of y'all had good points, and going back to what Brent said, as far as I'm concerned, every aspect of training has its place. The problem is people either don't want to talk about it, or don't want to admit it, or don't want to acknowledge it, or whatever. Square range flat training is great, and you need it. That's where you're going to learn your fundamentals. That's where you're going to practice your sight alignment, your trigger control, reloads, clear malfunctions, all those basic fundamentals that you got to have. But it's not fighting. You've got a target right in front of you. You know where it's at. It's not moving. You're not moving. That's for the fundamentals. You've got to get after that out into the one shepherd type environment where it's a 360-degree world on two different planes. And people forget it's two different planes, not just one. You got the horizontal and the vertical because, there might be somebody above you in a structure, on a hill, below you in a valley, etc. You're not told before, okay, there's a row of bad guys right there. As my good compatriot douchebag's brother Dick has pointed out in a video before. Targets lining up stationary, face to face ended back in the 1700s for a reason. We don't stand still lined up face to face anymore with our targets. So one shepherd, though I haven't been, I have done similar things. That's where you're going to find out all of a sudden that, 99.9% of the time you will not be in that perfect firing stance. You're not going to be in that perfect position to reload. You're not going to be doing speed reloads. You're going to be back behind cover, changing that mag, stuff it in there, pull the next one out, get it in, and realize, I'm still in the fight. I'm not going to impress anybody with that split time, but it was an effective combat reload in the middle of a fight. But it's because I'm not standing squared up with somebody holding the timer next to my ear. There's other people. I've got simulated rounds coming in at me. I got to get back behind stuff. I'm sure Brent has either said or been told, and probably you too, Les, that at some point for me it was basic training. Drill sergeant told us day one, as soon as rounds start flying, you will fit your entire body behind that Kevlar helmet. And it was a metaphor, but it was true. The first time rounds fly at you, you're going to try to scrunch yourself down behind whatever piece of cover you can find. And all that perfect stance, perfect reload from your gear, perfect everything from the gear is out the window, gone, throw it away. Go watch videos on YouTube of law enforcement shootings. How many times in law enforcement shootings is the police officer and the bad guy both just stand there blazing away at each other? Not very often. The bad guy usually takes off running. Police officer trying to jump behind vehicles. Everybody's moving to cover. Rounds are going haywire. That's because real life isn't a static square range. But people, I don't know why, they have this disconnect of not being able to separate. That's where we learn our fundamentals and marksmanship and doing all those things. Then we have to progress over to the fighting side of it. And yes, I understand not everybody has got access to, locations and facilities and stuff they can do that at. So, I mean, you make do what you can, but you still have to acknowledge that in your head and separate the differences. I'm not anti-competition. I've shot competition in the past. The one competition I used to shoot that I enjoyed was a small group that was a private defensive carbine club And the thing I liked about it is everything in it emphasized tactics, the use of cover, movement, multiple targets. How fast you could reload was relatively unimportant rather. It was not discredited, but it wasn't the focus, if that makes sense. That I enjoyed. Some of the other competitions I've shot in the past that encouraged me to get myself killed, I had a real problem separating from. So, in that regard, you just got to pick and choose and decide what you want to go to do. There's plenty of ways you can use competition to your advantage. You just got to mentally remember to do that on your own. So, might mean you don't win, but if you use it as an opportunity to properly use cover and those sort of things, you can always use it for your advantage. So, yeah, one shepherd is like a godsend. I wish they had some more places spread out a little bit closer for more folks to get to.
If I can go back to the shooting on known distance, like Bruce and I,
your channel, you can. I mean,
well, Bruce and I, man, we try to make it a point every year to go out to Nevada and shoot with Dimitri out there. And the very first thing we do is shoot known distance, 100, 200, 3, 4, 5, and beyond, actually. And you have to know your dope is on. And like, Bruce says, Bruce and I will zero our weapons here in Texas, and then we'll go out there and they'll be very close, but they still need those final adjustments because, I mean, when you're shooting out there past 500, I mean, that makes those minor, imperfections that, that's a drastic shift of your point of impact at those greater distances.
Yeah. At 500, the lot number of the ammunition that you're using can be the difference between a hit and a miss. That's how much of a difference it can matter at those distances.
Yeah, it's crazy. Dimitri, I mean, that's all he does. He goes out there in the desert and fucking shoots all day long. And I mean, he's got all kinds of little, tidbits and stuff that he'll tell us. And yeah, stuff as much as the lot number and the ammunition actually makes a difference, which is just, it's mind blowing sometimes.
He and I have had that conversation too, about what, and I mean, I've even seen it, 500 yards. I have actually seen that difference in switching from the same ammo, but from one lot to the next.
That's right.
That point of impact just about got me off a target. Still really tight groups. It was just that point of impact was a little different. So, and again, what Bruce was saying, and you too, Brent, getting that known distance, that's where you determine, okay, here's where my gun's actually hitting at this distance. Then, because even as great as the ACSS reticle is, if you haven't got the gun zeroed right and you don't know where it's actually hitting at, I had to have this conversation with somebody the other day about the ACSS reticles. You're not trying to be a sniper reticle at 1,000 yards with every single hash mark on it. It's, in my opinion, to be more minute of man with each of the holdovers on it, right? So I can just hit a man-sized target. But like, for example, I need to know that with my particular ammunition and my particular gun, if I've got it all zeroed right, even with that reticle, let's say at 300 yards, I'm hitting the target at 300 yards, but I'm 3 inches off of the actual point of impact with the reticle. That's okay, but I've got to know that. I need to know that information, because the further out you stretch it,
right,
the more that's going to get magnified. But to jump gears real quick too, for the comment section, we'll go back to the one that you highlighted that somebody was asking at the beginning, because this is something that I've ranted about, and I know some other folks have too. Training like big Army, big Marine Corps. Everybody gets wrapped up in that because they've put the time in, they've got the blood, sweat, and tears and lessons, blah blah blah. There's a couple of things there. Number one, I hate to say it, but the military doesn't always have the best training.
Yes, right.
A lot of folks go take external training on their own. It's a sad state of affairs. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. Military doctrine and training is also completely oriented around the military. That encompasses the entire military command and control structure, logistics structure, intelligence structure, supply structure, physical numbers, et cetera, et cetera. So training like the military will, unless you've got all that other stuff to go with it, doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most relevant or accurate that you need to be doing. Not saying it's not, but you just got to evaluate that and think real objectively about it. Okay, do I need to be training like a infantry platoon? Do I need to be mimicking SEAL Team 6? Or do I need to be mimicking, the Polish guerrillas in World War II? Which one's going to be more likely for you as far as all those other things that fit the bigger picture?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I agree with that completely. I've got a friend that was a Vietnam vet, and I was kind of surprised. I've learned a lot from him. And he said, yeah, when he was in Vietnam, this was in 1967, he said they only ever wore a butt pack. And they're like, well, why didn't y'all carry rucks? Like, oh, we had them, but there was no reason to carry them because we were out in the field for about 40 days at a time. And every single day, without skip, helicopter brought in ice cold beer, Cokes, food, chow, ammunition, and whatever else we needed. He said we had a choice. We could have 2 beers, 2 Cokes, or mix them up. And he said we never needed to carry more than a day's worth of rations in our butt pack because we knew the next night we were going to get resupplied. His unit wasn't the only unit that experienced that. Unless you've got that type of supply system, that's not going to work for you. And chances are you do not have that type of supply system. Even our military today, that was sort of a unique scenario for him. I doubt that, Brent, when you were out in the field, that you got resupplied on a daily basis. Most units don't. So you've got to carry the support equipment, not just the ammunition. So forget about chest rigs and plate carriers and lasers and all that cool stuff. Do you have the ability to make a fire? Where's your chow coming from? Because if you don't have chow, you're going to be ineffective after a day or two. Water, you're going to need water within half a day if you're moving heavy. So think about those things. That's very important. That's a big difference between, say, big meal with huge logistical support and you with jack shit.
Yeah, and if I could dive in here, if you guys remember the naval officer that gave us that naval brief on the Chinese Navy, he sent me a link, and it was actually the Commandant of the Marine Corps getting interviewed by, I think it was that same Naval Institute that you were referring, Les.
No, U.S. Naval Institute, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he was doing an interview with them, and the Commandant of the Marine Corps is pretty much said during this interview, he's like, look, Marines need to learn how to, acquire their own water, hunt for food, because the reality is they could be stuck on these islands by themselves, isolated, because the log trains have been cut off by the Chinese. So, I mean, it's not just, prepper here in the States or, citizen soldier. I mean, you're talking, even if you're a currently serving Marine or soldier and you find yourself fighting in the freaking South Pacific, you might have to use these skills as well.
No, and a great point of that in the modern age, Brent, when it was still Desert Shield, we moved up out of our primary airfield to a place called Ras Al Ghar, had this huge pier out into the thing, and Marines were literally signed on the guard watch fishing duty because, we were eating MREs and hot A's did not come very often. Sometimes we were on a meal plan of 1 MRE today and tomorrow you got a hot meal. And the worst part of that was the MRE always came at noon. You didn't know when your hot meal was the next day. If it was breakfast, not so bad. If it was dinner, that kind of sucked.
Yeah. I mean, that's, for most of what we're talking about here, it's going to be the term that I've always coined here, the armed prepared citizen. I mean, if we're using most of this stuff we're talking about, the world's gone pretty freaking bad. Okay. And too many guys get used to, oh, you know what? I can, even if I do go out and run around the woods, I could just willy-nilly drop things here and there, whatever. And if I lose it, when I get back home on, I'll hop on Amazon and order another one. Well, if we actually have to use this stuff for real, I can bet you there's a 99% chance you ain't going to be able to jump on Amazon and order another one. So you better start learning how to hang on to stuff, make sure you're not losing gear, all the way down to practicing and learning and figuring out when do I do a speed reload and when do I retain this magazine? Because there's going to be a lot of times you're going to want to hang on to those empty mags, because I can tell you for 100% fact, you ever get out in an unknown area and drop mags, especially in the bush down here, there's an 85% chance, even if you can go back to the same area, which after a fight there, I don't know why you'd want to, you're not going to find those mags. So real quick and easy, you've suddenly found yourself with a real fancy single shot rifle that's hard and slow to reload.
No, absolutely true. And the old method that I always learned, because when I left active duty and went to the Guard, the magazines were very accountable, and it's like stuff them down the front of your blouse, still do it at One Shepherd. And it's an effective method, because one of the problems we have at One Shepherd at the end of the FTX is magazine accountability. Yeah. And bane of my existence, but I always have mine, and yes, it sucks with 4 mags stuffed down your shirt and you go prone. That sucks. Your ribs do not like you for that, but yep. I have mags I can reload.
Yeah, I'll tell you, every time Brent films a video, the next day he calls me, he's back out in the field. He's like, hey man, do you remember where we were when we filmed this? Because I lost this pin out of my MG, my Mag 58. Oh, man, I lost this, I lost that. I got a pair of sunglasses that are still out there, man. And so John's absolutely right. You drop something out in the field that's critical, like you drop a compass or you drop something that you need. Chances of you, one, even if you can go back to that area, which you're probably not going to be able to, even if you can, you're probably not going to find it.
I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. A patrolling class that we did here recently, that was for me and some friends. We did a private one. A guy, it's a new instructor. It was on our property in areas that we 100% knew, and very much like One Shepherd, we were using blanks to do force on force and stuff. And we dropped a couple of mags, and after scenarios were over, we went back to look for them. We knew exactly where we were at, and it was only a couple of mags, and it took us darn near a half hour to find them. And that was we knew exactly where we were when we dropped them.
Hey, Les, vouch for me here. I dummy cord everything.
Yes, the man does.
Yes. And if
yes, he does.
If I do happen to lose something, I will be out there for hours looking for that shit until I find it.
He will.
Yes.
You guys got to keep in mind, I'm not talking about his modern armed prepared citizen kit. We do a ton of videos that are based on historically accurate stuff from the past. So a lot of what we do, there was no such thing as dummy cord at the time. So those are kind of parts that he ends up losing. I'm not trying to slight him in any way whatsoever. Brent's absolutely a squared away guy, but you will inevitably lose something that you don't have dummy corded. I lost my sunglasses. They weren't dummy corded to my head, something like that. You end up going, man, I wish I had those later on,
And to that point, Bruce, you can lose something dummy corded to your body. I had a GPS on my wrist that didn't come out of the field with me, and I have no idea when it came off.
Yeah, right. And you don't know where to look.
Yeah, no clue where to look. Didn't even realize it till we were back at the fob and I was getting out of my uniform going, oh, crap. Couldn't even tell you when I lost it because I was tailing Charlie the whole time as platoon sergeant.
I think everybody
anybody
who's spent any time out in the field knows that they've lost something that they didn't anticipate losing, and that sucks, right? So.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just getting back to the training topic. What I love about One Shepherd, and again, there are other organizations like SNS Training Solutions. Bruce and I have gone to train with them. I mean, spot on, excellent. Kind of offers the same tactical experience, but getting that 360-degree environment. I was the platoon leader. I had a whole rifle platoon in this FTX, and I got killed, I think, at least 3 times that I can remember during the duration of the week. And we get tasked with, conducting, raids, sitting in the defense and stuff like that. And one thing I noticed, I'm sitting here, I've got 3 full TO rifle squads, and I'm sitting here as the, patrol leader. or platoon leader freaking, maneuvering everybody. And it's hard to do all this when you're trying to figure out where who's who in the zoo, and everything's going on, and all these blank fire and full auto weapons are going off, and you start not paying attention to being behind cover, because you're turkey peeking up trying to see what squad has made it to where, or has the breach been successfully opened in the enemy's wire. So that's just one thing I picked up during this last week running all this is just being cognizant of being in charge of 3 rifle squads going through the attack, and being cognizant of what I'm doing as far as my own cover, my own safety, because like I said, I got hit at least 3 times I can think of off the top of my head over the course of a week during the training out there.
Yeah, no, I totally second that, Brent. The 4 times I was killed, first time, right after you got hit, I tried to get a hold of the unit there when we were setting up the defense, and I was coordinating attack, and all of a sudden I get hit, and I looked 90 degrees to my right, never saw the guy that got me, totally legit. Second time on our night raid, I was fiddling with the camera to get the PIR, wasn't focusing on the fight, got hit. Got the bunker blown up on me when they hit our lines on their night raid and stuff. It happened. The guy got around me. I got the 3 guys that attacked us to the front, didn't get the guy to the back. And on the final assault, died in literally hand-to-hand combat. Literally, the guy and I were touching each other and fired around in the air and safety killed each other.
Yeah.
Fighting gets brutal.
It's a humbling experience, right? It's a humbling experience, and there are millions of guys in heaven right now having these same stories. If you think about it, how many great soldiers, the best of the best with the highest kill ratios and the most experience ever, ended up getting killed a lot of times just from bad luck. But it's a humbling experience. It's something I think everybody ought to take to heart, that I think many people don't. I understand when you're young and you don't, but when you're older, that the reality of going into combat against a group of unknown people and coming out of it successfully, and then doing that time and time again, become exponentially lower every single day.
Yeah. The odds start diminishing every engagement for you. And, just piggybacking again off what you're saying, Bruce, and you too, Les, guys, people tend to so easily want to make light of other potential threat groups out there. Oh, yeah, they want to ever kick something off, we wipe the floor with them. And yet they fail to forget, and I've said this before, your opponent doesn't have to be good. All he's got to be is lucky. One dude, not even firing an aim shot that pops the melon of your buddy next to you, or God forbid your wife or kid or whatever, totally ruin your day and could be the most unskilled person in the world. It's not that shot with your name on it that's the problem. It's that one that says to whom it may concern.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we've seen a lot of things happen, to us and against us at One Shepherd. I think Brent would agree with us that it was just sheer luck, sheer luck.
I imagine a lot of the guys that we unfortunately lost in both Afghanistan and Iraq, I bet there's a good number of them that the person that actually shot them probably wasn't even looking down the sights of their gun when they did it.
Very possible. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally believe that.
Yep.
Another thing I want to say is, training, and again, I keep using One Shepherd because that's the one I've gone to, and by no means is that the only place, but at One Shepherd, when you go specifically the FTX, you're spending hours of non-fighting, whether that's digging in, conducting patrols, doing recon, and the fighting is a small percentage of that. And that absolutely replicates my experiences fighting over in Iraq and Afghanistan. And, guys will spend, 99% of their training doing nothing but the actual combat portion, when in reality is that's one of the smallest percentage of what you're going to be doing the whole time.
That's right.
when you've been out there on patrol for hours on end, that's when you're going to be complacent. That's when you're going to, not have your head on a swivel, because all you can think about is getting back to your lines and freaking racking out. So you need to find a training institution that, not just square range. And again, that's good, but you need to get yourself in that environment where you're continuously operating and you're getting that fatigue that's built into the training.
That's right. And I'll tell you, that's the biggest thing that I felt there going through One Shepherd myself is my physical limitations. I'm not in the shape I was once in, but it doesn't matter. I mean, those things are on a sliding scale, even if you're in the best shape of your life. If you're being pushed hard all the time, you're going to get complacent. You're going to start focusing on what's going on in this personal sphere and not what's going on out there, because you're going to be hurting. And it happens to me, and I'll be the first one to admit it to everybody. And if you're not out there in that type of training situation, feeling what that's like, those of you military guys, most everybody's going to know what it is. But if you're like me on the civilian side, if you're not getting a feel for what that's like, and you're thinking that, I'm always going to be alert, I'm always going to be looking around me, knowing what's going on, I'm always going to be, that's you're just kidding yourself. You're going to end up being the first casualty. It's just not going to happen. You can't be at 100% when you're at 60% because your body's completely fatigued after spending several days out in the field in inclement weather. It's not a realistic expectation, guys.
And that I'm glad y'all brought that up, because that's another thing. Guys just don't put any kind of focus on field craft, on staying in security, on doing all those kind of things. Again, I've been doing a big push lately on a bunch of medical stuff, trying to get guys, hey, you know what? You probably ought to have a pretty good doggone first aid kit in your ruck. Yeah, have your bleeder pouch with your tourniquet and pressure bandage, but I'd just about be willing to bet you that you're going to need some freaking Band-Aids and cortisone cream far more often than you're going to need pressure bandages and tourniquets. You're probably only going to need a pressure bandage and tourniquet once. Brent, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but even in the military, spend a whole lot more time on guard duty than you actually do shooting and fighting.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. And you can't just look at all training having to do with pulling a trigger. Land nav, for example. Nothing blows a mission faster than being lost. You can plan good, you can have great tactics, your guns can be perfectly zeroed, your guys can be locked on, and a land navigation error, man, you've just blown all your time hacks. That's the difference between hitting the target on time. That's the difference between getting out on time. That's an important one. And everybody lets that one lapse. Everybody looks over that one. And
then you can start tolerance stacking. Your land nav's blown, and now some guy's got an infected blister on his foot and no way to treat it, keep it from getting worse. And then another guy suddenly got freaking stomach cramps in the runs because he didn't think to try to keep his hands clean before he ate something, put fingers in his mouth. All that starts stacking up, and suddenly you got half your freaking guys completely ineffective, and you're sitting ducks.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. FTX last summer that I did, we had some bad heavy rain that lasted a good portion of the early morning into the early afternoon. The guys who weren't prepared, their feet got jacked up pretty bad because, hey, immersion foot sets in quick if you're not changing your socks. And then compile on that a rolled ankle, get a guy who's throwing his back out, get another guy who's got some diabetic problem and he hasn't been eating properly and stuff. And then, wow, a nine-man element that was highly mobile became unmobile and combat ineffective. That its only choice it could do instead of doing a series of retrograde delays was to pull back to its final Alamo position, dig in best it could, and hold on.
And guys, you see the theme here, what all these gentlemen are talking about. None of them have mentioned weapons, optics, lasers, or even gear. We're talking about the most basic personal hygiene and socks and first aid kits. This is the kind of stuff that will kill your effectiveness and take you out of the field before you ever even get the fire shot.
I've got another example. So we were doing a night raid on the enemy encampment and we didn't even know exactly where it was. We actually I had a recon element that was attached to my rifle platoon during the FTX, and they gave me a general vicinity of where the enemy was located, and we had to launch a night raid based off that. And so from the ORP, the recon element guided us in to the ORP, and then I told my compass man, who was right behind the point guy, I said, look, we're going to go 500 meters due east, straight east, and then we were going to stop, get a 360, and head south from there another 100 meters. So anyways, about 300 meters into the movement, he stops because I'm right behind him, and he looks at me. He's like, I think my compass is broken. And I mean, it's dead at night, and then we're in the woods. I mean, there's hardly any ambient light whatsoever. And I grabbed that kid's arm, and I said, no, your compass is not broken. Trust your fucking compass. And he's like, okay. And we kept going, and sure as fuck, we got there, and we were right on target, boy. So I know damn well that kid learned the lesson that night, that you trust your compass. Your compass is not wrong. You are wrong.
Not your instincts.
Right.
Yeah.
And to speak to that, that kid was the most successful guy on the raid. His team hit the most bunkers, and he came out unscathed.
Who was it? I don't remember.
It was Hamilton.
Oh, it was Hamilton, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So here's where we get that overlapping, Brent. Trust your compass if you know you've already gotten out with your compass and you know it works. Had a buddy of mine find out the hard way that things like really large pieces of steel on your chest will screw with a compass. Like if you're running, steel plates, for armor, and you suddenly whip your compass out and you can't figure out why your compass is different than everybody else's. Little things like that you got to find out, and the only way to find out is to actually get out there and practice this stuff.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else that happened to me at my last one shepherd. I'm going through my gear, getting everything packed up, ready to go 2 days before the event, and I realized my compass, which I've had for over 20 years, is frozen. It's no longer working. It shit the bed sitting in a storage bin for the last few months. And the problem that I had was, it was good that I caught it before I went to one shepherd. It was bad because I didn't have it when I needed it. So you've got to check that stuff regularly and make sure that all your gear is tip top, that you don't have a problem with something, regardless of the quality that it is. This is a top quality military compass. I ended up buying another one just like it, and I'm sure it'll last me another 20 years. But at some point, sometimes for unknown reasons, at the worst timing, stuff just decides to quit working on you. So you do have to check it.
Oh, absolutely.
You were getting ready to go to training, so you got the benefit before you actually even got to the training. You got benefit from it.
I could have very easily have taken a knee in the field at night with Brent, went to shoot that azimuth, and then realized doesn't matter which way I turn my compass, north is turning with the compass. That would have been a real problem.
You just didn't realize your superpower was to turn the earth under your compass.
That's my biggest fear, man. Something like that, because I am an Eagle Scout. I'll mention the Boy Scouts there. I am an Eagle Scout, and I learned many times, always trust your compass. Just like when I was jumping out of airplanes, trust your kit. Not that you really have much of a choice, but you do have to put faith in your equipment when it's go time. And unless there's a really clear, evident problem, such as the north point of your compass not ever pointing north and moving whichever direction you turn your compass, you have to trust that equipment, because your brain will absolutely convince you that there's things out there in the woods that aren't out there, and that your equipment is not working when it is, and that you think you know which direction you're heading when you're not. Don't trust your instincts on that stuff. Go with your equipment.
And equipment can fail at any time. Brent will remember the very long night patrol we did at the first one shepherd semester in West Virginia. Well, my 20-year-old tape of how I had taped everything down started coming unraveled as we were patrolling.
Oh, yeah.
I was having to fight to keep my rig together while we're moving through the night. I got back to our patrol base, And the only thing literally holding all my gear together was my miles. All my tape just decided in that torrential rainstorm, it's like, nah, 20 years, I'm done.
Yeah.
Retirement.
But on that, knowing your gear, checking your zero, that's a thing. One of the things that kills me on the YouTube Internet Gun Commando thing is how you zero your weapon. The truth is, how you zero your weapon is irrelevant. If you're hitting on target and shooting good groups, that's what matters. So if you can zero in one round, great, your wallet thanks you. If it takes you 2 mags to do it, who cares? You got that zero. You did whatever you take to get it, because once you have it and you keep it, you can figure everything else from there.
Sure.
So my feeling is, on zeroing, it's so important. Who cares how much ammo you use?
Nope.
Just make sure it's right.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you're locked on. And I agree with you, Bruce. 25 yards doesn't do it. I personally go with the 100-meter zero theory, that I can adjust off of that. Am I right? No. Am I wrong? No. Do what works best for you. But I totally agree with Bruce. The 25-yard thing doesn't do it.
As long as you know where you're hitting at each given distance, regardless of what distance you're zeroed at, that's what counts. If you can make the hits, you can make the hits.
That's
I'm
right.
kind of
I
in
agree with
between, y'all. Depending on the gun, some of mine are zeroed at 50, some of them are zeroed at 100. It depends partly on the gun and honestly partly on the optic. Like my longer range rifle, one of the ones that actually all 3 of the ones I just did the video on today, they're all zeroed at 100 so that I can accurately take advantage of the way the reticle's calibrated, because it's calibrated for the gun to be zeroed at 100 yards. Some of my other more general purpose non-magnified carbines are 50 yards, but I still know what they do out to, a couple of hundred. I've only got, well, no, I don't either. I was going to say even my little 9mm AR, I was going to say it's at 25, but it's not. I zeroed it at 50, just because 0 to 50 is really more realistically what I expect to use that gun at. But you know what? I've taken it back to 100, and I can ring steel with it at 100. So I know generally where it's hitting at that distance. So, don't get too wrapped up on that minutia. I mean, just like they get wrapped up on bullet performance and barrel length and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, be able to hit a man in the chest with a projectile moving in excess of 2,000 feet per second. You're going to give him a bad day.
Yeah.
And that's a great point, John. Great point, because one of the lessons everybody should have learned in the last year and a half, you don't always get the ammo you want. You get the ammo you can get.
Bingo.
Yeah, I saw a guy on Facebook who made a post on a shotgun for him. He says, "Hey, I hunt deer at 25 yards. What zero should I zero my shotgun at?" It's like 25 yards, man, right? Like if you know what distance you're going to be shooting. So let's say you've got a home defense firearm that you're only going to be shooting inside your home. Well, it doesn't necessarily need to be zeroed any farther than that. Like a 25-yard zero, if you're only using it for home defense, is absolutely fine. A 100-yard zero, if you're shooting a 9mm, what's wrong with that? That's absolutely fine. But anything that for me, I'm a 5.56 guy. Okay, and I don't want to start an internet fight over here. Okay, let's not overthrow the government today over Bruce's comments on 5.56. I'm a 5.56 guy. Everything I shoot gets zeroed at 300 because I know between 300 and 0, I'm going to be getting solid hits on whatever distance I'm shooting, really out to say almost 400. But just know your weapon, know your ammo, know where you're hitting, whatever caliber it is you're shooting, whatever type of hunting or personal defense that you're doing. You're going to have different weapons that are zeroed at different ranges. You're not going to have a handgun for personal defense zeroed at 300, but you may have a rifle zeroed at 300. It's different for everybody. But like Les says, do what works for you, but be confident and be competent in where you're hitting at those ranges.
Yep.
Yeah, and on that, my primary rifle, I always run an ACOG with RMR on top, and my RMR is zeroed at 15 yards. And that's not something I've looked up or researched. That's because I know at 15 yards in, I'm using my RMR. I'm not using my ACOG. And that's my personal preference. And I have shot for years with that. And that has served me true to this day. And not once have I looked up anything on like what I should be zeroing my RMR on top of my ACOG with. I've gone out, but I know I'm going to be using that damn RMR for, and that's 15 and in.
And you're the kind of person that I'd be really afraid to go up against for that very reason, right there. And I'm serious. You did it because you figured out this is what I need to do because what's going to work for me in these situations that I'm finding myself in. And then I went out and practiced with it, and I know what I'm doing with it. You can show me all the numbers and data and tables and specifics and all this other stuff all you want to. I don't put near the stock in that I do somebody's actually gotten out there and, hey, you know what? I'm hitting this target at this distance, this way, repeatedly. I know what my gun's doing, and I got to jump back real quick to piggyback again off of what Les was saying. And this is kind of on the same thing. The numbers and the statistics and specs things that people get so wound up about, including when it comes to zero distance and ammo selection and all this. These guys act like that if I took a 10.5-inch 5.56 with a 55 grain M193 round in it, M193's best performance is when the bullet's traveling at 2,700 feet per second or faster. That's the threshold that it needs to yaw and fragment and do its most energy dump. Okay, I get it, right? But if I put that same 55 grain projectile somewhere in your upper thoracic cavity near your heart, lungs, liver, and it's only doing 2,500 feet per second, maybe even 2,400 feet per second, do you really think you're not going to have a bad day?
And a lot of stuff's relative too, John, because like, for example, in 2 weeks, I'm going over to Finland to shoot a competition. Okay. 2 weeks ago, I had to zero my rifle. I went out, I zeroed it, used the 5.56 ammo I have. I literally do not know what 5.56 ammo I'm going to get when I go to Finland.
Right.
Okay. I know what I'm doing with the ammo I have right now. When I get there, and only when I'm under the clock and fire the first shots on the first stage, well, I know where the rifle's truly hitting, Now, I know the range that they're going to, and I know the farthest shot I'm taking is 150 yards. So pretty safe bet that it's all going to be relative, But the point of it is you got to do your best, and you got to be flexible with what you get.
Well, and it's my whole thing of focus on your marksmanship fundamentals.
And that'll do a lot more for you than the bullets will.
That way up above trying to figure out the optimal barrel length, caliber, bullet, powder, velocity. Worry about freaking being able to hit the target.
Yep.
If you can hit a man in the chest, a 22 long rifle through your aorta,
it's game over.
I've got it on good authority that bad things happen to you when that happens. I'm just saying. And I don't mean to sound so wound up about it, but it's just so many years now. I guess because I've moderated on a couple of really, really big gun forums for 20 years, and I've just seen so many people get wrapped around the axle. I mean, just banjo string tight. And it's like, guys, seriously, just worry about being able to hit the target.
It looks like Chris is in the chat. Just FYI.
Yeah, Chris is in the chat. Hey, Chris.
All right, we got to stop talking about him now.
No, but Chris brought up a good point, and Brent, it's what you helped me film with out there at One Shepherd on my British Advanced Snap Shooting. We did I did a video a couple weeks ago in this old British Snap Shooting challenge they did in World War II, 5 rounds over 100 yards at various distances against variable sized targets, and you had to get a hit within 2 seconds of exposure. Well, at One Shepherd, we did using Miles gear, and we had people simulate the targets. And between the flat range against cardboard targets and the Miles range against real targets, scores dropped. It was a very significant thing. And surprisingly, iron sights did the best. We got a pretty good data set. There's more to interpret out of it. But one of the interesting sets, too, is Doc Larsen shot it with a variable power scope. So he's done it with Miles and with live ammo, got the same results, which was interesting. So it shows Miles has a correlation between real rounds, but it also shows that walking, anything you do from a perfect range position adds lots of variable, including a target that moves around. And our average ratio, I think, Brent, was the average person got about 1 hit and two near misses, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, it was a very hard drill with 5 rounds. but it was realistic training, too. And you have to do training that makes things realistic to your particular situation. A gentleman in the comments a little while ago said 90% of his time is in a city environment. Okay, he realizes his environment, probably a handgun and a short barrel rifle or a 9mm carbine is probably going to serve him better than a 308 FAL.
I'd agree with that.
And some guys living out there in the desert Southwest, something in 308 is going to serve them a whole hell of a lot better than an MP5.
Yeah.
And Bruce, you mentioned you were zeroing for 300 meters. I bet you that's because that's your average or potential engagement zone for you. Here for me in Virginia, West Virginia, that's a long shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's my max. I'm telling you, you're absolutely right. I mean, even here in Texas, we have areas of big open fields, but for the most part, and I grew up in Georgia too, it's heavily wooded. I mean, guys were constantly, hunting deer with a 30-30 or an SKS back in the day because they're just not going to have a shot beyond 50, 75 yards. That's really almost unheard of in a heavily wooded, hilly area. In Texas, we're going to have a little farther shots than that, but not beyond 300 yards. It would be very rare. But you go out to the desert in Nevada where Dimitri is, 300 yards ain't jack. 300 yards, the dude's done close distance on you, and he's close. It's amazing the distances that are out there. We view distances, and we say, how far is that? And he says it's too far to shoot with 5.56. You get out beyond 700, 800's pushing it. 5.56 starts getting really wandering around a lot. You're probably, unless you've got something really specific built for that type of range, you just need a better bullet, a bigger bullet built for those ranges. So it does depend on where you are and where you anticipate that fight occurring as to what your weapon choice and ammunition choice is going to be.
And that's why I get so wound up when guys start throwing around blanket statements all over the freaking, inner tubes, because what's appropriate and better for your area might not be the same for mine or somebody else's or whatever. Because just like you said, Bruce, in my area, 100 yards, that's like, oh my God, where'd you find a straight line of sight that's 100 yards at? Because it darn sure ain't in our woods unless you get lucky and it's on a dirt road or a fire break. But off the beaten path, sometimes, man, my cousin's property where I'm at all the time, there's literally a good portion of that whole, not just his, but like that area of the state that sometimes you can't see more than 5 feet. Yeah. It's literally that thick. And, to try to tell me that, oh yeah, you got to have a 308 or a 6.5 Creedmoor. Well, no, not really. Because it's wasted. I can't do anything with it that I couldn't do with, a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah, in that area, 6.5 Creedmoor is the same as 30-30 that your granddad carries around. It's just, you're right. You don't have that terrain. I know what you're talking about. It's so heavily wooded, and then you have elevation changes as well, especially as you go farther up north on the East Coast. I don't know there are people that are going to have 6.5 Creedmoors out there and 50 cals and whatnot. They've got $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 invested in them, and they're looking for a place to shoot them.
Yep. The farthest I've ever shot was when I went to an event up at Palmetto State Armory in South Carolina, and it was on a range up there, and we shot at a mile. And I'm proud to say I hit a target at a mile. I'll probably never do it again, but I did it that day, and I got the coin that says I did, and I'm not going to ever try it again because I don't want to not do it. I did it. That's it. We're gonna end the game right there. But you start getting those long distances. And we were doing that with a 6.5 Creedmoor, and that 6.5 at a mile, you're doing this with it. You're mortaring that sucker in. It's like, holy cow! Distance is like that. Something that Les said earlier when you mentioned, Les, about iron sights and some of the drills y'all were doing. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, man, my vision was my good thing. That was like the one good part of my body that worked all kind of great, was being able to see stuff. Iron sights, 300 meters, shoot, I'd put it between your eyes. Now, age and sight degradation and astigmatism and all that, me and iron sights, we don't get along so good no more. I mean,
I'm with you there, brother. I'm with you there.
Me too.
Because I love iron sights, but that's why, again, like edged reticle optics, like, the primary arm stuff has been such a godsend for me, because it's like, oh my God, I can actually see the reticle again. There's my aiming point. I don't have my aim point anymore where I've got 3 different red dots and I'm trying to figure out which one of the 3 dots is the actual real dot.
Yeah.
And that's a critical thing there too. Gear selection. I've talked to a lot of people with astigmatism. They use something like an aim point. They see stars. They don't see a dot.
I said I have 3.
Yeah.
Well, that's my case. It's a cluster of grapes, and so if I'm bringing it up on, and I ran a Trijicon T1 when they first came out, loved it. And guys, this is blasphemy, but the primary arms etched reticles, I've gotten rid of my aim point T1 because that's great for up close and for fast reflex shooting, but for precision shooting where they're saying find the center of the dot and know your holdovers. There's no center of the dot if you've got astigmatism. For me, it's this weird starburst cluster of grapes that there's no center to, and you're spending more time like, which one am I actually looking at? What is the center of this? You don't have time for that. Whereas with an etched reticle, you don't have that problem. It is actually clear. So I'm one of those kind of weird guys that, because of probably primarily my astigmatism, I prefer the etched reticle over a traditional red dot. I don't care who makes it.
Oh yeah. And, I think people have to have realistic expectation of what their optics will do. Like, a lot of people think I put a red dot on my pistol and now I'm super fast Jerry Michelet. No. Matter of fact, learning that red dot can be harder than iron sights in some respects, depending on the model you get. But it does allow you to make hard shots a little bit easier. Shots you might not have been able to make with your iron sights due to odd angles or the fact that, hey, you got to do this one-handed. That's where its advantage comes in, definitely at night because you have something illuminated to actually look at. But it doesn't give you more speed by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I've got a guy that I work with that's a former Marine. He was Desert Storm era, and I don't think he has. I don't think he's done a lot of. Well, I know he hasn't done a lot of rifle shooting since he got out of the Marine Corps. But and he asked me, he said, "Hey, I need one of these newfangled optics. Which one do I need?" It's like, you know what? Honestly, if you're not training regularly, you probably don't. You understand iron sights. You trained on iron sights. That's what you're familiar with. Stick with that. I wouldn't stick something new techie on top of my rifle if I don't have a lot of training on it. Save your money, buy ammo, right? So I don't recommend optics to everyone. There certainly are benefits to them, but if you don't have a little trigger time behind them, a little training to be familiar with them, it may not be the very best choice for you. I see guys running irons. I don't knock those guys. I either know that they are either one, they're probably not, don't have a lot of expendable cash. I don't knock anybody for that. I was in that situation one time myself. Or 2, and very possibly they really know what they're doing on iron sights. And I don't have a problem with that either, because iron sights never break. Iron sights never go down. And I see guys with iron sights. I don't knock them, and I don't think that anyone should. Find out what their story is. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're not capable shooters.
And that's a great point too, because Brent will speak to it. Is like we couldn't be more different at One Shepherd in our rifle selection. Brent puts his optic on, he has his lights bolted on, and there I am, fixed stock carrying handle A2 every time.
Hey, Chris, we made this exact point. I think we even said 10%, didn't we?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Exact same point almost at the beginning of the chat here. But yeah, 100%. 90% of your time.
First aid, survival, small unit tactics. Yep.
We even talked about finding food and making your own water and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I mean, 100%. And like we were saying, I mean, this semester was probably the epitome of that. I mean, because it was area defense, and my guys, spent so much time building positions, clearing lanes of fire, putting up. It's notional concertina wire. It's that plastic fence. What is that stuff called?
Garden fencing.
Garden fencing. Yeah, but that's concertina wire. And in order to breach it, the guys have to cut all the way down at each individual cross section. But these guys were out there, doing priorities of work in the defense for hours before they even saw the enemy. So, and then when the enemy did come, they were gone. I don't think we saw them until a whole nother day. The regular riflemen, we had recon guys out there, but a lot of the guys just were in back in the rear, and 24 hours probably passed before they saw enemy contact.
Oh yeah, and what did we probably spend most of our time doing out there, Brent? Fixing comm. Yeah. Going out, fixing the wire, finding out why the radio's not working.
Yeah, running field phone wire, trying to figure out why the hell it's not working.
Yeah. And in the end, it worked great. One of the big things that was damaging to the field phone wire is, having that attack and everybody running back and forth, tripping up and messing it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are all skills that you are never, ever going to get in a 2-day carbine course. I've taken many of them. I've taken them from big name instructors. You're not going to have to worry about water. It's in your cooler, in your SUV. You're not going to have to worry about food. It's being catered in for you. You don't have to worry about building a fire. You don't have to worry about wet feet, your socks, your boots. You don't have to worry about any of this stuff. They're simply teaching you how to run a rifle proficiently, or a handgun, or whatever class it is you're taking. These type of warrior skills that are sustained warrior skills outside of that point of contact, everything leading up to it and everything beyond it, you're not going to get many places other than places like One Shepherd.
Hey, real quick, I got to dime in on this and I'm not going to name the guy because I love him to death, but perfect example of that. This guy shows up to One Shepherd. He's got a plate carrier, fucking ops core helmet and all these gizmos and crap. And we take our first contact by the enemy, and they literally went full force at us, and we ended up losing like 24 of our guys. But with that caveat, the enemy lost exactly the same amount +1. But we're all sitting in the dead zone, and we couldn't respawn for another hour. And he's like, hey, has anybody got any water? I was like, I looked at him because he's got a fucking plate carrier, helmet, all this crazy comm shit. And I'm like, where the hell's your water at? He's like, oh, well, it was my Camelback, and I took it off right before they attacked. I said, you got all this shit on, and you don't have fucking water permanently attached to your body. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I threw in my canteen. So
I've seen that.
And a great example right there. Canteens, why they're so awesome. One, you could hand someone else your water to plus them up when you needed to. Try doing a water party with a squad's worth of Camelbacks versus a squad's worth of canteens. You can take a ruck, dump it out, fill it full of canteens, run down to the water source, fill them all up, and bring them back. You really cannot do that with Camelbacks.
Two things I want to go back to real quick, and then I'll shut up about it and leave it. Back to the iron sights just for a moment. So a couple of things I've been seeing in the comment section. Yes, if you can see iron sights really well and your vision is great, you should learn how to shoot iron sights. Not everybody can. I know people that don't have good vision from the time they were 10 years old. To try to force them to learn how to use iron sights versus a good optic and get them to become a good marksman, I'm not gonna push that. I want them to be a marksman. I don't care what they're using. If it's not iron sights, it's not iron sights. But, and good cousin Dick brought up a couple of points. I'm not gonna disagree with him, but he knows me enough to know that I'm not. To me, edged reticle optics are like iron sights because that edged reticle's always there. I'm not relying on a battery. I don't need it to be illuminated. It's there, right? I do have guns that I didn't put iron sights on because I've got like some of my primary arms optics because that edged reticle's always there. And as tough as those things are, anything that damages that optic so that it's not going to work, there's probably a really high probability that the gun's either going to be damaged so bad that it's not working, or I'm damaged so bad that I'm not working. So while I do think backup iron sights are a good idea, I won't go so far personally as to say that it's mandatory depending on what you're using. Now, if you're just using like a electronic red dot, oh yeah, absolutely. But if you've got a good etched reticle optic, that I think can offset that, because that is like an iron sight in my book. Now, weather-wise, that's the only other thing that Cousin Dick pointed on. That's something that you're going to have to deal with. I mean, pouring down rain, you got to think about optics getting water and stuff on them and the sight picture being occluded. That said, usually when it's raining that bad, my eyeball's getting enough water in it that even the iron sights look occluded to me. So, it's a 50-50 one way or the other. Bad weather. Bad weather.
Iron sights fill up with rain too.
Oh yeah.
There's been many times I've had to blow through the back of a peep sight to clear it out to get a shot. Yeah, we all know the trick. We've all been there. So yeah, I mean, there's limitations.
I'm nothing off that script box. So
yeah.
And I can give video backup to all these points. If somebody goes to my channel and looks up Finished Brutality 2019, the last stage, Rudy Reyes had to borrow my rifle to shoot the stage, because in the previous stage, he was doing it in the pouring down rain, and he had one of those projected reticle sights. Water got in it, and he said when he went to aim in at the target, he didn't have one dot. He had like 15 dots. And he had no idea where he was shooting. And it was horrible to watch, because he's borrowing somebody's rifle anyways, because he's in a different country, and they only put this one type of optic on it with no irons. So he had to fight through it, you know. So the next stage, I'm like, here, Rudy, take my rifle. It'll do fine in the rain, you know. Also, to back that up, Finished Brutality earlier this year in the winter, in the snow. You know, I'm shooting with the crew from Bloke on the Range, and they're shooting a French Maz 36. The rifle sights on that designed for very precision range fire, and it gets dropped in the snow, and the snow, when he tries to wipe it away, turns into ice. His sights were gone for the rest of the stage, you know. Whereas Ian from Forgotten Weapons was shooting an old Mosin Nagant post and notch sight, and all he had to do is wipe his hand across it, and the sights were usable again. You know, so which is the better rifle? Great argument, huh? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point. I'm gonna tell you guys, if you're going to a class that they're gonna reschedule because of rain, it's probably not the class that you should be spending your money at. I've taken some that were that way, and I've taken some that were like, come on, because shooting in the rain, how else are you going to know what your rifle, your optic, your gear, your body's capable of if you're not out in the freezing rain shooting that day? If you're not miserable when you're shooting, you're probably not getting the most out of your training class.
Absolutely. One of the best classes I ever had was 3 days in Virginia in the freezing cold and sleet and rain. And the best takeaways I had from the class had very little to do with any of the shooting. It was what gear and clothing and equipment worked, what didn't, what could I tough through and not tough through, how did having soaking wet, ice-covered feet affect me, you know, in doing stuff, how did my optics work in the rain and the sleet, you know, what jacket was supposedly waterproof and wasn't and got soaked through and what didn't. And, you know, it was a great 3-day class. And unfortunately, all the great part of it had little to do with the actual shooting part of it.
Yeah.
Hey, on that, if you want a true immersion experience in foul weather conditions and training and light fighter tactics, go to Bravo Company, Low Shepherd. I mean, we're talking like monsoons rolling through, and good Lord, how cold was it that one semester where there was like the ground was almost snow? It was.
We did have snow that one night. You know, it was light snow melting the second it came down. And the next morning, what Brent's talking about, I'm an OC. I'm waiting for this ambush to go off, and a lot of boredom in the ambush. And I'm looking at my boot, literally watching ice crystals form on it.
But I mean, hey, training commits, training conducted. That one semester we just talked about, it rained over half the time we were there. And hey, nothing stopped it. Training continued.
Yep.
You know, and jumping back to One Shepherd, Brent, one of the things, again, that I love so much about what One Shepherd's doing, and I say this without having ever even been there, is things just like the conversation that you and I had earlier this day of putting that ruck on with some weight in it and going and doing stuff, walking with it and finding out, wait a minute, that shoulder harness ain't quite adjusted right. That load ain't quite riding right. Why are those load lifter straps not pulling it where it needs to be? You don't find all that stuff out standing in your living room with it.
No. And we see that in One Shepherd when the guys show up with their gear.
That's what I'm saying. That's
and it's
gold.
always
We saw some real gear bombs this time.
it's always the new shit, right? Because you can't fuck up 7082 Alice gear. But when
you're like God, who was it? Willem Dafoe in Platoon, where you're just going down the line and going, you don't need that, you don't need that, you don't need that, that's wrong, tuck that in. Those rules still apply today, and I can see it too. And I haven't been in the military, but I haven't spent plenty of time out in the field where I see a guy and I'm like, yeah, that deal he's got going on right there, he ain't gonna have that tomorrow because it's not gonna work out for him, and he's gonna be corrected real quick. But had he have not went through the training, he wouldn't know that. If the stuff stayed hanging up in his closet on his gear cross and only came out for when he went out to the 1 hour training range to shoot with his buddies, he's not gonna know that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why One Shepherd has, on the second day you're there, a ruck march to get everybody up. That's the PT that day. You put your stuff in your ruck and find out what works and doesn't work. And they actually go as far as to also, give you a stopping point along the way, let you fix that problem. And it's weird to see.
That's such a huge help too, Les. Even for me, I pack all my, I tell you what, I don't know about you guys because you're all very experienced, but for me, and I think I'm experienced too, I pack all my gear exactly like I think I want it. And I end up, after that first ruck march, I end up making some adjustments. I hope that they're minor, but I do end up making some adjustments. For whatever reason, this strap's not feeling right. It's rubbing me wrong. And after a couple of days of this, it's going to be a problem, and I can make adjustments. That's a huge help. Even for the most experienced guys, it's okay to make adjustments.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, when you go in the field, you go with what you know. On my channel, I've tested a lot of different rigs out and tried a lot of different things, but it's like, okay, we're going into the field in the FTX. I've got my rig. I have pretty much remained static since the 1990s because I know it works, and for whatever advantage I might get out of this other piece of gear, it does not offset what I've already got.
I got you on that, and I can agree with that on many points too. I'm much the same way. I hear you. Don't fix what's not broke.
Exactly.
I mean, as somebody who makes gear for a living, I tell people that all the time. I mean, yeah, I want you to buy my stuff, but at the same time, if you've got something that works and it works because you've actually gotten out there and done stuff with it, that's the caveat, then rock on with it, Yeah. Now, don't tell me that, oh yeah, this works great, and then you're adamant that it works great, and then I watch you shoot a 3-gun competition, and after you run from one point of cover to the next, you get to the next point of cover and go to reload, and you got nothing to reload because it looks like Hansel and Gretel left a trail behind you. Well, I thought you said your stuff worked. I mean, that's the kind of thing that drives me nuts,
Yeah,
And I
want to interject another topic of discussion here. So on top of making sure your stuff works, make sure you can throw it on quickly because the second night of the FTX, the enemy launched a night attack. And Les can tell you, I was up from insertion, the morning the FTX started and got an insertion. I didn't sleep a week. I mean, I think I finally laid down and to close my eyes, and maybe 20, 30 minutes later, the enemy launched a night attack. And literally, I jumped up, I grabbed my, I have an OD LBV 88, and I threw that son of a bitch on, buckled up, and I was in the fight. No blouse, nothing. I was out there Vietnam style, man. Freaking boots and utes with the deuce gear on, fighting, hooking and jabbing. And, all my combat load was on me, and it was on in seconds. So if you have a system where you have to, and it takes you 10 minutes to get all your crap on, that shit ain't going to work.
Oh, absolutely, because things can go wrong. I was right next to Brent when that happened. He was on and out the thing. I grabbed my deuce gear, flipped it on, the radio antenna caught in the cami netting, and I was a freaking soup sandwich for what seemed like forever.
Yeah.
And that's something to think about when you're packing your gear. Also, I know there's a lot of guides to it. I'm sure One Shepherd has a few too, but that you sort of prioritize your stuff so that what you need for the fight, you can grab and go. And the stuff that's the support equipment, that's sort of long-term or creature comforts, that stuff is not a priority and probably shouldn't be on your sort of first line of kit. I don't know if, how many people follow like first, second, third line. Not important to me either. I don't necessarily follow it, but that first thing that you grab and go that you're like, this is what I need for the fight. That should be primarily equipment and gear that's for the fight, not for long-term sustainment.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the policies Brent's always put down, and I've since picked it up, is, you have certain things on you. We always tell all the troops in our platoons, you will have a red lens flashlight. You will have your wet weather top. You will have one MRE with you, and you will have one change of socks with you on your body all the time. And by on your body, I mean in your 782 gear. That way when you step off, you've got it along with your water. So you can stay out in the field for a whole day with just that setup, no matter what happens.
And what happened, Les? There was like 20 of us sitting in the dead trench, and the attack actually happened like a minute after our respawn time passed. So we had to wait a whole hour plus before we could get back in the fight. And like guys were like, "Whoa, I need chow, I need water," And chow was right there in my butt pack, man, ready to eat.
Yeah, what's Brent Larsen doing? What's sitting there eating, drinking, having a good time.
That's why I'm
great
such
point.
a proponent.
Steve said
that's why I'm such a proponent. Going back to my whole armed prepared citizen standpoint, regardless of what kind of gear you've got, you better have at least something like this, right?
Sure.
That I can have food, water, medical, spare ammo, all those basics, even in just a little small pack. Because it doesn't take 2 seconds to grab that pack and throw it on, and I can go. Even if you ain't got a big ruck, you got to have a pack of some kind, because you got to have stuff with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And whether it's a backpack, like a lot of good guys in our platoon, we're running backpacks all the time. I prefer the butt packs. It's probably just preference because of what I've always done, but it works. Long as you can carry what you need, that's all that matters. And also what
of the pack, whether it's your back, your butt, or wherever, it's a pack. That's the key word.
Yeah, it's a good point.
What else we got, fellas? We're at an hour and a half.
Well, another thing to consider about your training is we've talked about your environment, but also you can be in multiple environments. My rig setup for my bailout bag in my vehicle is very different than my patrolling rig. And my rig I've set up for doing close quarters combat is not the same as my patrolling rig by any stretch of the imagination. And my setup for being a light support weapon is not the same as my setup for my rig as a DMR. You have to tailor it to what you're doing. And if you have multiple missions, have multiple rigs.
That's exactly correct. That's exactly right. Everything's mission specific.
No, I want a universal one size fits all that fits nothing.
Yeah, that's the other option, right? Is you have the one size fits all that doesn't do anything really well. So
exactly. And I would tell most people in their training, if you're training for the real world, whatever that may be, that not losing things is more important than how fast you can reload something. And that's where the good old GI mag pouch comes in. One thing that's good about is retaining the magazines, provided you use it correctly, meaning you don't cut the little inserts out. That's very good about retaining magazines. Is it quick to reload from? No, not really. But Speed reload stuff is usually what we see leaving trails of mags as people run through the woods, and having the ammo is way more important than how fast you can reload the empty magazine.
Because if you're using proper cover and concealment and tactics, you're reloading from behind cover and not just standing up in the broad daylight open with people shooting at you.
Yep. And hopefully go ahead, Bruce.
Go ahead, Les.
I was just going to
say the chance of you realistically needing to reload extremely fast is extremely rare.
Exactly. And there's always remember the 2 rules of gunfighting. Rule 1, bring gun. Rule 2, bring all your friends with guns.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to piggyback off that point. A lot of modern gear, it all looks like it's designed for SWAT operators instead of freaking light fighters out in the field. And you even see that one Shepherd, some of these Briggs that guys are bringing. They all want that cool zero dark 30 look. And I'm sorry, man, when you're low crawling through the through the rocks and the dirt and moving through the woods and shit, like these guys are losing magazines. They got fucking gadgets flying off their shit. They don't have a butt pack. I mean, and
that's one of the hardest things that I have to combat with marketing my gear and trying to talk to people about it. Everybody, again, like I said, the global war on terror, everybody wants to mimic SEAL Team 6 or Delta or, an SOF A-Team or, something like that. Heck, even our Rangers, the past 20 years, for the most part, haven't really done what Rangers traditionally have done, right? And everybody's gotten away from that, and they want to mimic the local SWAT team who's mimicking SEAL Team 6. Well, yeah, what they're using to go kick in doors in a house is going to be totally different than what you and I need, even low crawling across the front yard. It's going to be different. I'll give you a prime example of exactly what you're talking about, Brent. Plug for my buddy NC Scout at Brush Beater. He keeps a number of my chest rigs on hand when he's doing classes, and I don't think he's done a class yet where he hasn't had to loan out a chest rig to a student, because they find out real quick that doing the real stuff like that with the great high speed impress your buddies with your split times gear ain't working out there in the woods. It ain't working in the dirt and the mud and the muck and the rain and the cold. And it's Hansel and Gretel, or they go to pull a mag out and they've got a larger handful of mud than they actually do mag.
Yeah.
That's particularly true for open top mag pouches. Those are great. I have some, so they're great for speed reloads, but they're also great for when you're crawling on your belly under barbed wire fences, through trenches or whatever, for leaving that Hansel and Gretel trail of magazines behind you. And that's one of the things that I know John understands of his closed top pouches. That protects your magazines, keeps the mud out of them at I'm going to say a minimal, if any, time loss between guys that are doing split times on the 2D range. I'm a big fan.
It's not that slow.
No, I totally agree. Yeah. I have used John's rigs in competition, and they have never been an impediment.
I mean, and I'm not here to pimp my own stuff. I mean, there's plenty of other good stuff out there too. My whole point is, when you're getting out there doing this stuff, you're going to want to be able to retain that mag, number one, so that it's there when you need it, and number two, it be functional when you need it. Those two things are probably going to take a far bigger priority than how fast you can get it out. I mean, because you're going to get it out. I mean, even like Les said, I mean, I was the same with Les. For the longest time, all I had was my old, LB and mag pouches. They weren't the fastest in the world, but you know what? I don't recall a time where I ever had an issue reloading with them.
Yeah, and there's actually a design principle behind the GI mag pouch. That's why I say don't cut the inserts out, because if you look at one properly, the inserts are not symmetrical. They're very tight for the two outboard mags, and the middle one's loose, because they expect the middle one to be the first one you draw. But try this experiment at home, kids. Get a GI mag pouch that's properly set up. Put 3 mags in it. Unbuckle it and turn it upside down. What will happen is the mags will slide down, but the lid design will catch them. Yeah, so they don't actually fall out.
I've actually made some pouches with that same lid design with my tuck tab design incorporated in place of a buckle, and works the same way. You can just about leave it unhooked, and the way the lid works, they catch those mags, and you don't have to worry about losing them so much. I mean, obvious exceptions and things happen, but still,
I mean, things can happen, sure, but
for the most part, they're going to be there.
Yep.
Yeah,
they're going to be there.
Yeah. And you got to also balance what you're doing with your gear. You know, a lot of guys took plates out to us, this FTX, and I think just about everyone I talked to regretted bringing them along, you know. And yes, you need armor protection, but you know what? My age, I'm more worried about heat exhaustion than I am taking a bullet. So in a patrolling environment, I'm willing to go without plates.
I'm in the same boat. I'm in the same boat as you, Les. I have armor. I have top of the line stuff here at the house that I may don in some strange home defense scenario. If I'm gonna be out humping it in the boonies for a few days, I know my physical capabilities. I'm not going to take those plates. That's my choice. I'll make that decision. But you won't see me with a whole lot of Kevlar because I don't have the big military telling me I have to wear it. And I do know my capabilities, and I prefer to be able to move a little bit farther than to have that armor protecting me. That's a personal choice, but it's something that everybody has to make. But if you're not in the best shape of your life and you've got a bunch of armor you think you're going to don and you haven't trained in it, you may want to get out and train in it and see if that's going to be the right solution for you.
Absolutely. I have preached this so hard on my channel, and people look at me cross-eyed. Again, everything I'm talking about and doing is from that armed, prepared citizen standpoint, okay? And I've got, just like you, Bruce, I've got good body armor. If I'm pulling static security somewhere, I mean, if zombies and Terminators are roaming the street and I'm pulling security at our place with the rest of the family, and I'm a stationary, static target, and I'm sitting still, I'll armor up like a turtle. If I got to get up and move anywhere, my priority is on movement. I want to be able to maneuver and go, and even no matter how good a shape you're in, you'll be able to move faster without the armor than you will with it. Depending on your environment, and I'm going to tell you right now, the deep southeast, if you want to see how good you are with your armor, come down here in June, July, or August. Let's go for a walk, and let's see if you can make it around one perimeter patrol with me without becoming a heat casualty. I'll put a fresh $100 bill on the table if you can. Spoiler alert, I can already tell you that it is physically and humanly impossible for you to carry enough water on your body to not become a heat casualty. You will need a cart behind you. You'll be dragging a cart behind you through the woods full of water because you're going to sweat it so fast and so much. June, July, August, September, nah.
Brent may have come looking for me before and found me laid out on my back, sprawled out, my plate slung left and right, trying to hydrate before. That might have happened.
Hey, boys and girls, try this at home. Put your armor on all day and then go it. If you have a cool boss, wear your armor to work and do your job in armor. And at the end of the day, take it off and see how wet your shirt is, you know, and then see, hey, how worn out am I? And you're going to find you're smoked.
Yeah, and the thing that everything's a trade-off, but thing to remember, the more kit you're carrying, whether it's armor or rucksack or whatever, to John's point, if you particularly if you're in a humid environment, you're gonna have to carry more water, and water's heavy.
Right.
Yes. The pints a pound.
I know this is gonna start another rabbit hole, but you know, I remember watching John get into a back and forth discussion about like not wearing a pistol, right? Because I mean, think about holster, pistol, extra pistol magazines. Well, you know, if you got a rifle, you're cutting into your magazine weight, your water weight,
Sure.
and all that stuff just to accommodate this secondary pistol. And in reality, you shouldn't be a lone wolf. I mean, if you can help it, right? You should be operating in a team or a squad, regardless of whether you're military or a freaking, armed prepared citizen, like John likes to say.
Exactly. People look at me cross-eyed about that. I've got a belt rig. I've got my holster set up. I've got my handguns. I've got all that. It's situationally dependent on when I'm going to use that stuff. If I'm doing one shepherd, if I'm doing, patrolling and stuff, I'm out in the woods, I'm up mobile. I want a rifle, mags, and a lot of water.
Yeah. I agree. I've got the same thing. You'll almost never see me with it. I train with it, but you'll almost never see me with a secondary if I can get out of it, because a secondary means an extra canteen of water. And I'd much rather have a reliable rifle that I can depend on and an extra canteen of water than a reliable rifle that I can depend on and a handgun that I don't need.
I had somebody tell me one time, well, what if I have a catastrophic malfunction with my rifle? I'm like, well, you could also get struck by lightning while we're standing here talking too.
It's so rare, right? Or at least it should be if you've got a quality rifle that you've trained on. Yeah.
Well, I just saw the other day where, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, guy's gun blew up. Yeah, okay. And you know what? For every one of those instances you can find, there's probably hundreds of thousands that didn't. And if you went down the rabbit hole of why that guy had that problem, depending on how honest he's being, it may come down a lot more often than not to operator error, etc. If you've got a good, reliable gun that you've went out and trained with and shot with, I'll just pick on an AR-15, and Bruce, you can probably back me up on this. Tell me if I'm wrong. Most AR-15s, if you're going to have a catastrophic malfunction with the bolt of the bolt carrier, it's usually going to happen within about 500 rounds. If a good AR makes it 500 rounds without breaking a lug, breaking the bolt carrier, then it's going to work. It doesn't just spontaneously decide to quit working. The metal's either weak or it's not weak. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room in there. If you actually go train with your gun, if you actually go practice with it, put rounds through it, the gun works, you're using good ammo, the chances of you having a catastrophic malfunction, that, and by catastrophic we mean the gun's blown up and ain't working, are actually pretty doggone slim. Even that said, if I've got a secondary and I have that bad of a catastrophic malfunction where the gun blows up, I'm probably screwed even if I've got a secondary, because even if it doesn't physically injure me, it's probably going to stun me long enough that I'm going to take a round from whoever's shooting at me before I can remember, oh, wait a minute, I need to transition. I mean, that's just the sad reality of it.
And you were spot on, John, because I've got a video I did 2 years ago called When Guns Go Bad. And I was using a Glock 22 Gen 4, banging away at the range. Thing blew up in my hand. And my first reaction was, make the gun safe. I just set it on the deck. And then I was so stunned. I'm like looking at my hand. Why is my hand all bloody? Doing some first aid. Yeah. The one thing I wasn't was in the fight.
Right. I mean, that's just the cold, nasty nature of the thing. And that's with a handgun. Talking about a rifle caliber, blow up right underneath your face. That'll ring your bell even if it doesn't injure you. And the first thing you're doing is dropping the bomb that just blew up in your face. And then, trying to get your head, wait a minute, why are my eyes all blurry? Why is everything crazy? The bullets are still coming at you if you're in a fight. They don't stop just because your gun blew up and you time out. I got to clear my eyes so I can, okay, let me transition. All right, now we can go again. It doesn't work that way. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This all circles back. This all circles back to the point that was made earlier about, guys wanting to look like SWAT operators. Marine infantrymen, Army infantrymen, they don't have pistols unless they're a freaking part of a crew serve weapon system. Like the actual gunner in a machine gun team, or a small gunner. They don't have pistols. They have a primary. And again, you're working in a fire team. You're working in a squad. Now, if you want to talk, fucking SWAT teams and, I'm doing a bin Laden raid in the middle of Pakistan at 0 Dark 30, well, yeah, it's a different story. Or, if you think you're going to be lone wolf somewhere, but if you're going to be lone wolf somewhere, you ain't going to survive very long, man. So.
Any infantryman anywhere in the world, not just U.S., they're not going to have a secondary. Just hop on Google and type in Hungarian infantryman and see how many photos come up with guys that are running secondaries. Russian infantrymen, North Korean infantrymen, pick your country of choice. That's not done because a secondary is a mission specific type weapon. Yes, all those countries are going to have certain special troops of secondaries, but your typical infantryman is not going to have that secondary because they've deemed that it's not necessary.
That's Ruth. You wouldn't believe how many people have looked at me cross-eyed, younger guys, when I've had to tell them very few people in the United States military actually get a handgun. What do you mean? Most don't. Platoon leader, maybe a platoon sergeant. The crew serve guys, that's
the
RTO. That's really about it.
Yeah.
The other 90% don't get one. Well, what do I always see? You don't always see them with them. You see movies and TVs where you think they've got them, but in real life, that ain't the case.
It's sort of like I use this comparison to people as well, where I say, every picture of like Nazi Germany, you see a Tiger tank or King Tiger, right? Why is that? It's because there were only a few King Tigers and Tigers out there. It's because every time one of those freaking beasts rolled by, the cameraman wanted to take a picture of it. He's not taking a picture of the boring-ass grunt sitting in the corner drinking a cup of coffee. And the same thing is true today. If you're a cameraman and you're out in wherever, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, wherever, you're taking pictures of the cool guys that you see and the cool shit that you see, not the average boring grunt that's over in the corner looking at pictures of his girlfriend. That's just the way that it is. And so it skews our perception of what our military is doing, and it incorrectly skews that perception. It's not the reality, and it's not the reality of war. We make movies about really cool stuff and great battles that went on. If we made movies about the average grunt's life, nobody would watch them because it'd be boring as shit.
So boring. Same thing, just same analogy. And I know Brent's had to deal with this too. When we're doing, the camo test videos and stuff, invariably in the comment section all the time, you sound like a freight train. You've obviously never moved through the woods or anything. You don't know how to move through the woods or what you're doing. Okay, Sparky, if you want me to do a video where you don't see me and you don't hear me, I'll do it. But it's going to be the most boring freaking 15, 30 minutes of your life because you're not going to hear or see anything. That's not the point of the video. Same thing with what you're saying, Bruce.
Yeah.
People get wound up about that and they miss the whole picture.
Hey, guys, we're at just a little bit over 10 mics till 2 hours. So I just want to, I think we can go around the horn. What's the best training class that you've actually participated in? And I'll kick it off just so I can steal one Shepherd.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with one Shepherd FTX. And the reason I say this, and I'm not using my military experience. I'm talking about the civilian side. Nothing has replicated from what I've been to as far as the civilian side of the house, a real infantry environment like one Shepherd. It's a little over 48 hours. They usually index at, like 10, 1100 on the last day. But it's just from the moment you get inserted till the end, it's just continuous operations. And, everything you can think of, the human factor plays so much into it. There was one fire team leader out there that his fire team was getting smoked. They all had PVS 14s, and at one Shepherd, it's like, whether you have guys with PVS 14s or any night vision capability is always like a juggle, right? This time around, I had at least 13, 14 dudes in my platoon that had NVGs, and this particular fire team had all of them had NVGs. And, his team was getting tasked to do a lot of stuff. And he came up to me. It's like 2-3 in the morning. And we had an enemy reconnaissance element that actually had penetrated past our lines during the enemy's attack, and they were behind us. And I had to use these guys to try to route those guys out. And he came up to me and he's like, Brent, we're smoked, man. I don't know how long we can keep doing this. And I grabbed him and I said, dude, human body is capable a lot more than you freaking realize. I was like, push through 100%. Don't quit. And I promise you, at the end of this, you will be good. You will look back on this and you will be ecstatic that you pushed through and you didn't quit. And he did. He pushed his guys all the way to the end. And he came up to me after the FTX is over. And he's like, Brent, you were absolutely 100% right. And I said, I told you, brother. And I gave him a coin because he did, man. He was motivated. He pushed through. And like, I'm telling you, this kid was inches from just mental defeat in this regard. And, I haven't experienced any other training. SNS was close, but it was a different environment. It was only like a 3-day course as opposed to like a 1-week course. And it was very similar, but man, I tell you, to replicate that human fatigue and that situational awareness that you need going into that fight and just having your shit together, One Shepherd is my choice for civilian oriented training. So kick it over to Les.
Okay, well, I got to hit 3 things. One of the commenters asked, when are we going to get a real AAR on the FTX? And if Brent doesn't mind me spoiling alert, next Monday, guys, we're going to try to put it together with all the important players and do this online. And be prepared. It'll probably be a long one because so much happened. Best training class I ever went to? The answer is always the same for everybody. The first one, because that's where you learn the most. Every class you go through after that, you kind of get a nugget out of it. But your first class, regardless if it's a pistol class, shotgun class, hell, basic NRA pistol to get your concealed carry permit, you'll learn the most out of your first class. To toot my own horn, one of the classes I'm most proud of is one of the ones we offered called Carbine Application Course. Brent, you shot that one with me. Real live fire. Get to do all the things that you train to do. Peels, advances to contact, hasty ambush, all that stuff in a real environment, in a real 360 environment. And I think that adds a real element because you have to do it on real terrain, not a flat range. Bruce, go ahead, man.
Okay, so I'm going to I got to give 2 answers here. The obvious answer, which is probably One Shepherd being what I would consider an advanced class. Guys that are prior military infantry, it's going to be right up their alley. It's going to be, for the most part, a review of what they've done before. The big difference being is that they won't have to have they won't be told what kit they have to carry. They get to choose what kit they want to carry and kind of do their own thing. I noticed that was a theme in some of the comments there. But without a doubt, One Shepherd, any of the events that they hold are going to be one of the most they're going to get the most out of it for someone that's fairly advanced and feels that they've got their kit squared away. For a newbie, a person that's not highly skilled, highly trained, maybe you're prior military, but infantry wasn't your role. You don't have a ton of experience. Man, I got to go back to the Appleseed. And I got to say, on the Appleseed, guys, you want to learn how to run a rifle, run it well, understand iron sights, understand zero, understand shooting at known distance. Find you an Appleseed with a known distance class. It's going to be extremely different from a One Shepherd class. You're going to be focused primarily on the rifle, shooting at distance, understanding the sights of that rifle. But that will be an excellent class to take. And I'll say, take that class and run it with iron sights. We can always learn optics later. They're very good at training you how to use iron sights. So take you an iron sight rifle and shoot that Appleseed class. You'll have a good time there, and it won't be as physically strenuous. You won't need nearly as much gear or experience as you would for a One Shepherd.
So I'm going to kind of do like Bruce and give a couple. So what Les said, the very first handgun and carbine classes I ever took, learned a ton from. Kind of plateaued down from there. Fast forward a number of years, of all the training I've ever done, probably the very best one was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, when I did my buddy NC Scout, brush beater, his 3-day scout course. That one, it's not necessarily that I learned a whole lot of new stuff from it, which I did learn a lot from it, but it was a course where I actually was able to get out and do the stuff, partly that I already knew, putting equipment and gear to the test, and then learning the new stuff that he was teaching. That is hands down one of the best, and he's a great instructor. Tied with that would be the one that I recently did, the rural defensive patrolling that my new friend Ryan at Alert Plan Training Systems come down and did for us. It's a private class. That one was just really, really, really good. Just so many takeaways, from that one. So those two are kind of tied for top of the board. But then, like what Les said, man, those first two, you take away a whole lot, because those first couple of the ones that just really, oh my God, I'm stupid. I mean, that's really what I took away from them, was like, I've been shooting all my life. I don't know crap, so, and I'll give another little honorable mention. So like, my buddy Noel there in the comment section, he owns Bishop 30 Solutions there in Northern Alabama. Noel's got a great school that he teaches. And I've had the privilege of, he and I have done some fun stuff, running some buddy team drills, live fire, advancing and moving on targets, cover to cover, that sort of thing. And man, there's just no substitute for that stuff. There's just not.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty much it. And I would have to agree with Bruce. You should have a fundamental understanding of at least how to operate an AR-15 before going to one Shepherd. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Les, they only allocate like 30 minutes to, like kind of basic intro to the AR-15. I mean, it's quick. They got 100 pounds of shit to cram into a 10-pound bag when you come into Basic Warriors course. So,
it's the most basic thing you can give someone with an AR-15. But I'll say credit to most students who show up. One of the ways, when I start that class off, I ask, who's ever fired a rifle? See whose hands goes up. Who's fired an AR-15 M16? See whose hands goes up. And who owns one? And the majority always are in the who owns one category. But occasionally you do have the guy who's never touched one in his life. Yeah. And you'd be well spent if even all you do is watch somebody's YouTube video on basic AR-15 manipulation. It will put you in good stead for that first day at One Shepherd.
All right. I think we're about to wrap this up, guys. I think the biggest takeaway here is obviously find tough, realistic training. There's nothing wrong with the square range, but don't limit yourself to that. That is not going to prepare you for actual combat. It's going to, that would be a good teaching the fundamentals and basics of actual shooting. But, what about the rest of the 90% of combat operations? The patrolling, the land nav. I mean, we talk for hours about this stuff. So, unless any of you got any final thoughts, we're gonna end this one.
Yeah, one to tag on to what John said there. When you go to a class and you've learned all this new stuff, immediately when you get back home, go to your friends and teach it to them, because the best way to learn something is to teach something. So while that's fresh in your head, teach it to someone else. So A, they get the knowledge, and B, you get to reinforce what you know. The other thing I would say is, folks, get ready for MGM Scout. It's coming on second weekend in November, Force on Force, with a theme of the MGM Scouts from the Korean War. And if you didn't get your fix at the 40th FTX or you couldn't make it, here's a chance to get something real close to it. Bruce?
All right, my mic is on now. I'll just say I'll just piggyback on what Les said, because it was a great point. Get out there and train. Make sure that you train hard, that you take on what you can take on, and and you don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to go out to say a one shepherd and jump into that feet first, although that's probably one of the best courses that are out there. But get out there and do the best that you can do it, whether it's on a square range or whether it's whatever the case may be. I know we've got a lot of people that are saying, well, I'm in New York, I'm in Canada, this and that. I don't have access to certain weapons or whatever. Find a workaround. There's always a workaround, and take the information that you get in whatever training class you have, bring it home with you and practice it at home. Dry fire at home. There's a lot of stuff that you can take from training exercises that you can then work on at home that are outside of firing live rounds into a target. Utilize that, because these are skills that if you don't regularly use, they do start to fade over time. You have to stay on top of it.
So I think you guys that have been to One Shepherd, y'all can tell me if this is wrong or not, but spending some time at somewhere like One Shepherd or similar training is probably one of the best ways to realize that you don't want to ever get in a fight.
Oh, absolutely.
That's probably one of the best ways to, wow, this crap sucks. I really hope I don't ever have to do this. I mean, we embrace it and we do it because we like the training, we like the knowledge, we like to know that we can. But for me, it's always been, man, I love knowing how to do this. And dear God, please don't let me ever have to.
Yeah, it's a good point, John.
Yeah, ain't nobody going to call index in the real deal. It goes until somebody.
There's no timeout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no respawns either.
Yeah,
Nope.
Yeah,
right.
that's right.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate y'all tuning in. And like Les said, next week we're looking at trying to do an AAR for this past 40th anniversary One Shepherd semester. There was so many folks. There was over 100 freaking warriors taking part in this, and 4 different units essentially taking part of it. That our AAR at One Shepherd was condensed very, very minusculely. And then next thing you know, beer and steaks came out, and we really didn't get a proper AAR. So we're kind of hoping to try to do it over this live stream. So stay tuned for that. If we can't do it, we'll just fire and we'll come up with something else. So thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to leave a comment.